Good morning. It is the start of day 5, the final, the finale, the ultimate. This guitar is actually going to be done, barring heart attacks or heat stroke. Okay, today we have got to apply the final little bits of finish, which in this case is just a little bit of wax. Towards the end of yesterday I got 3 coats of our oil, the guitar finishing oil prototype actually, on this, so guitar oil version 2. And the neck had another coat, and that's it. So finish, hardware, the neck needs some fretwork, a fret dress, crown and polish. We need to make a nut, string it up, wire it up, and play. Okay, so the wax, this is a mix that a friend of ours made for us actually. It's a mixture between beeswax, carnauba wax with, I think, a little dab of white spirit, and I really like it. Now, if this was a guitar that I was building to sell, I would definitely end up with at least another 3 or 4 coats of oil on here. With the 2-3 coats of oil that it's currently got, it's actually strong enough, and yeah, pretty good. I'm going to put a wax finish on the front. I want the back to stay matte, and the neck is perfectly fine as it is because of the burning process. Now the trick is heat. And essentially this helps the wax spread and gets a better finish. My other choice in wax, while I'm experimenting with this at the moment, tends to be Renaissance wax, which is phenomenal stuff. And this is just giving just a little bit more protection. Polish that up, and then we're done. And I wouldn't be disappointed to see this finish on a guitar in a shop. So we have sort of a satin matte finish here. The wax adds just a little bit more protection, and yeah, feels great. The only thing I'm not 100% happy with is that shape there. It turns out that my template was just a little bit off, and yeah, it's not too bad. I suppose it's onto the neck. Let's get that part done first. So we need to do a level crown and polish. Step 1, check and see how straight your neck is to start with. This is an unfinished prototype notched straight edge. The notches fit over the frets and then allow so that you can see exactly what the neck itself is doing rather than the frets, because the frets themselves, especially at this stage, will be undulating to a certain extent. Okay, I need to try and adjust that just a little bit. Whoop, wrong side. these work on multiple different necks. Oh, wrong way, come on. It's far too early in the morning to remember which way truss rods go. Okay, that neck is now absolutely perfectly straight. And we can start playing around with masking tape. Now, always mask up the fretboard. It is essentially finished, and sanding and refinishing, etc., in between frets at this stage is really not amusing. Okay, that is a tedious task, but is required. Okay, grab a permanent marker, draw on the top of your frets. Now, the reason for this, and this really is the most important part of a guitar build. If we don't treat the frets properly, you are probably going to end up with a guitar that doesn't feel right, and most definitely won't sound right. You would end up with either a very, very high action, so the strings will be very high over the fretboard in order to stop buzz, or you will end up with buzz, because if you're pressing your string down on this fret and it is lower than the frets on either side of it, the string will be buzzing on that fret, and we need it to be nice and level across the board in order to get a comfortable and audibly improved tone. I prefer leveling files. I've used them my whole life, and I just feel like they are right for me. The other way to do it is with a leveling beam, and this is an aluminium square tube that has been hand lapped to be absolutely precisely flat, and then you stick sandpaper on and go to town. I don't know, I feel less comfortable with those. A lot of people argue with me, but it is what you're used to as well. Now, whether you're using this or that, you're only taking a 4 or 6 mil wide pass on each fret, because the guitar has a radius. So move along. In increments and evenly over the whole fretboard. And what I'm doing, as well as metal, I'm taking away the marking from the permanent marker. And where I'm removing permanent marker, that shows that the fret was high. And where you can see permanent marker left, for example, is at that section, that fret is higher than that one. That's a little bit low there. So those two are hammered just a fraction harder and went just a fraction deeper into the fretboard. And I don't have anything major. If you are uncertain whether you need to do this at all, get a fret rocker. And again, you've got precision, perfectly flat ground edges at different lengths. And I'm going to use this to test, actually, a little bit later, how good my fret job is. If it rocks, that's because the fret in the middle is high, or the end, the third one, is low. And you go along and do that. And that's if you're working on a on a guitar that is already built and is supposed to already have nicely flattened frets. There is more spotting over here, which is fine because I'm going to do something different there in a minute. There's a low spot there, and the edge of that fret was hammered down a little bit harder as well. So I'm nearly there. As ever, try and keep the metal dust away, if possible. I'm also not pushing hard. I don't want to compress the neck because that would change how straight it is. And there we go. So that is perfectly flat from here on down. Now, the next stage, for us at least, most people will make the whole fretboard flat and then allow the truss rod to create radius. That's a valid point. We at Crimson, however, use something called fall away, which is the last 7 or 8 frets of a neck. I've put 2 on there, that's enough, thank you very much. We want those to ramp down, and that also helps improve the playability vastly. Now for that I do use a leveling beam. I have a piece of tape on here so that this is causing the ramp. 2 pieces of tape there, piece of tape there. That angles it up, and essentially I'm taking material just from these frets at the moment, and it'll move down. Okay, so what this is to do with is the vibration of the string. Once I've set the angle that I want, I can actually take this away. Woohoo! Ah! Fail. Okay, with that gone, I use that as a template and just go over it with my leveling file. And this gets the same finish across the board, because I'm going to be sanding these soon. Okay, so this is, as I was saying, to do with the vibration of the string. When you're playing a low E open string and hitting it really hard, the string is vibrating from the nut here and sort of rolling in a big rolling motion. As you go up, that carries on happening. And if we've got this, I think I have a low spot there still. So I'm just going to remark these last frets. This process is something that takes time and practice. I have luthiers who work for me who are teaching me and making me change the ways that I do things, because they're not as precise as they could be and aren't getting the best results possible. And you know, I've built 150 odd guitars and was happy with almost all of them. So it's a gradual progression. So now, fret rocker, and I'm just sort of rocking to see if I can find any high or low spots. Now, the reason for this is that, much like any other part of a guitar build, there are things that can happen that can throw you off. And in particular, at this stage, what I'm looking for is a fret that hasn't seated itself in properly. So if the slot was cut slightly wider by mistake, the fret goes in. When you're leveling, it pushes it down, but then it pops right back up again, and you'll have an issue. This double check that I'm doing here will hopefully point that sort of an issue out. There we go. We're good. On to the next task. We mark again. I have every prototype crowning file we've made to choose from. It's great. Now, there are various different crowning files available. This is what we make. It's a traditional triangular crowning file with safe edges ground on. You should be able to use this without masking the fretboard off, but I wouldn't advise it. What that means is that you can rub it along at various angles without damaging the board or ripping the paper too much. Now, there are half-round sort of concave files with teeth inside the concavity. I hate them. Check out my other videos for why. The plan is we want a small thin line of black right down the center of the fret. And the reason for this is intonation. If you are pushing down your string onto a fret that is flat, think 70s fretless wonder Gibson Les Pauls, the intonation point isn't in the center of the fret where the carefully placed fret slot is. It's 1.5 mil closer to the bridge. And that's fine if they're all exactly the same and your bridge is moved that far to compensate for that. This is a compensated scale length after all, but your nut will still be in the wrong place. So we want a nice sharp point for now, and that is your intonation point. So what I tend to do is go for a biro pencil, pen line thing. I'm working, I can't think and talk at the same time. Go away. What are these cameras doing here anyway? The funny thing is, I have made more video tutorials on how to do this particular task, and it's evolved over the last 7 or 8 years, than anything else. And we've made 800 videos on YouTube, I think, at the moment. Anyway, so here we go. Now, I'm not rounding the fret over. I'm actually making a sort of a Mayan pyramid with the flat top and triangular sides. We'll do the rounding over a bit later. So find the angle that suits you and hold your crowning file at that angle. This is obviously a lot more difficult when you're working on a guitar where the neck isn't a bolt-on. At the moment my hand would be inside of a guitar, and as physics will unfortunately tell you, that's not currently possible, although I'm holding out hope. Now, essentially you start at the highest section. These files are slightly curved, so you start in the middle and go to the edge, and then turn around and do it the other way. But that's not necessary at the moment. Our files are also slightly offset, so the one edge is a little bit further up to help counteract that. Now if I was to take the tape off and just try and play the guitar now, it would work. The tops of the frets are slightly scratchy, so bending would be uncomfortable, but it's got that pyramid shape, and that eats into the ball of your finger and also is not comfortable as you play along. We want it rounded over slightly. I've got probably 800 grit on this leveling beam. This is another prototype with, it's weighted, and I'm just polishing the tops of the frets with this. It's not taking off very much metal at all. Okay, so that's just removed some of the worst scratches. 400 grit wet and dry paper. There are many different ways to do this. Once again, I have wrapped it around my fingers, hold it like so, and as long as you're even across the whole fretboard, what we're doing is, as you can hear, bumping up and over each little fret. And we're taking an even amount and also slightly rounding it over. Okay, so that's one option. Another is to take a credit card or glue stick or ruler, something like that, and wrap it around, wrap the 400 grit paper around, and actually polish like so each fret. The problem with this is it does tend to eat through the masking tape. My problem is, because I've started showing you this, I do need to keep it even. So I now have to go through the whole process like this, because I do want the frets to be well, of course I want the frets to be perfect. And I'm also rounding it over a little bit as I go. Another technique is to do this a lot. It's a bit hard on the paper, but it does the same thing. It's jumping over the frets, slightly rounding them over, slightly polishing them, and works all right. So once I've done this, we're going to move on to the fret rubbers. Now, fret rubbers are something we make here that have abrasives suspended in a soft degradable rubber, and it goes in various different grits, from the really coarse, which you're probably not going to need, right through to an ultra fine, which will leave a mirror finish. And the mirror finish is what we're after. There's an alternative, micro mesh, foam backed ultra fine sandpapers. Don't last very long, but do get a very good result. Okay, so this is a medium fret rubber. You can use them in many different ways. And as you can see, it sort of molds itself to the fret. This is one of the harder, earlier versions that we did actually. But you can see that we're starting to get shiny metal. And the shinier it is, the smoother it is, and the smoother your playing will be. Also do the fret ends. Just remember we stopped at about 400 grit on those. Okay, I've just run downstairs and got a finer and a superfine. These are the newer ones. A little bit more flexible, a little bit more give. And what they do is they really do conform to the frets. And polish away. So there we go. Because they're a little bit more flexible, you can do this. Okay, so that's the fine. Let's get rid of, it's like when you're using wet and dry paper or something to rub down a guitar, lacquer or something like that. You use 800 grit, rub down, use a rag to clean the excess water off, etc. In that water you have 800 grit abrasive particles. You throw that rag away and use new water when you're moving up to 1400 grit. Same thing here. So we've moved up to what is essentially about 3000 grit actually. So clean it all off and polish. This isn't the method that we use at Crimson Guitars because it's hard work and I'm lazy. No, there are faster and easier ways to do this. One of them involves jeweler's rouge and a buffing wheel. If you're doing small polishing tasks, these are fine. When we're building a whole guitar, we mask the fretboard off and we go and we use a pedal-full buffing wheel to polish each fret. And that does work very well. Now, this is a chrome polish used predominantly for motorcycles, etc. And one of the techniques in fact the easiest technique is to just dab some on. I tend to get 2 or 3 frets worth. And then you just polish away. And that does bring up the final mirror shine that you require. There is another option, which is another tool that I've been sort of on and off playing with. Half of my job is building guitars, half of it is running a company, leaving no more halves to play with. The other half, when I'm asleep, is designing tools for luthiers and stuff like that. And one of the others, was this a prototype that didn't work too well? Let's see. This is essentially a strop, 4 frets. So slightly softer leather, so it gives. Don't use brasso or anything like that. Too liquid. Just get the excess off. Okay, so obviously I've got loads of detritus around the bench. I'm going to have to clean that off. But first of all, we have masking tape that does need to come off. That is done and dusted. The nut hole still needs to be cut, and then once we've done that, we're going to oil the fretboard. And I really do need to clean up the workbench. use my thumb as a guide. So this is the fretboard and finish cleaner, and oh, I love that smell. Took about a month to get it smelling right, which you'd be surprised, guitarists, if it doesn't smell like lemon, they're not interested. Okay, this is just getting rid of any lingering crud that's in there. Okay, I've run downstairs and got a new bottle of the fretboard restorative. It's a separate oil that we've developed that also smells of lemon oil. But the reason we've done this is the traditional lemon oil that luthiers tend to use is really, really nasty stuff. It's something like 70 or 80% petroleum byproducts, and this could be used as a massage oil if you felt like smelling like a guitar. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. Let's have a look at this gorgeous fretboard as it appears before our eyes. I'm going to let it soak in. So put on more than I normally would. And I'm going to leave it for 10 minutes because we don't want dry fretboards. So we're a couple of minutes in, and I'm going to just rub the excess off. The wood has come to life. This is a different type of oil than the guitar finishing oil, which has all sorts of accelerators and hardeners and exotic components. This is just lovely. And you will need to recondition your guitar every 6 months or so. Okay. Cutting it down to the right width. Okay, it's essential you've got a good seat. Anything other than that is going to inhibit tone, and that's the last thing we want to mess with. What we've done is I've planed this pencil in half, and I have got lead now coming down to a sharp point. That sits on top of the fret, draws along the nut, and that is the line, the lowest point that I want my nut slots to be. So what I really want is to carve down to a point just slightly higher than that, and that'll be my final nut shape, matching the radius of the fretboard. So you want your strings to be about 3.5 mil from the edge on the bass side, and roughly 3 or so on the treble. And this is a string spacing rule made by one of our competitors. Oh my goodness. Okay. Razor saw. Mark those out. Yeah, that's fine. 10 to 46. There we go. These are hand-cut nut slotting files that we make here. Precisely gauged. Oh, I've missed one, actually. Hold on. Precisely gauged if you're not thinking about what you're about to say. Okay, I'm not going to be going right down to the line. I'm going to leave this until we have strings on, and then we will see what needs to be done. As I said earlier, gaps are not allowed. Dip a little bit of glue and throw your brad all on the floor. So this is just going in the bottom. If we need to, we can break that seal. Now, this is the final, well, these are the final bits and pieces. I'm not happy with the look of the wood just in there, so I'm just going to stain it a fraction. This is our Stunning Stains shots. That's a little red. Let's see what happens. Yeah, which is concentrated stain. From here on in, it's just putting a guitar together. Grover. Yeah, top quality. Fit exactly in the tin mill hole. I don't normally choose gold. But gold with this colour really works for me. Okay, I'm not tightening these up yet because I haven't finalised the actual positioning yet. We're back to a 100-odd-year-old drill. I always dip screws and a little bit of grease or wax or something like that, wherever possible. Grovers are okay, but there are cheaper screws that will just strip and die as you go. And these tuners have locating barbs in the rear that are pressing into the wood. And there we have that. There are going to be string trees here as well. I'll put those on once we've got strings. And there's going to be a serial number as well. Scratch plate. Now what I've opted for here is a full-size single coil rather than the traditional. And I do also have some cool gold covers. Not entirely sure if it's going to stay gold or maybe go black, but we'll put it together with gold and see what happens. The problem is that don't fit. So I'm going to need to do a little bit of remedial routing. Ooh, I went all South African there for a second. It's been a while. So that is, I need to take a couple of mil away from the plastic, and that's not going to be too much of an issue. Same process as ever. I'm actually going to do it from the back and then just eyeball the layout. I'm going to use that good old masking tape and super glue trick and a router and a sacrificial board as well. Success. While we're here, I'm going to drill these holes out. We might as well line everything up and prepare. I think 3.5 mil should do it. Easy. I'm used to working with metal or wood. And this really is the final stretch now. Let's start assembling ourselves a guitar. Let's see what we can get done before lunch. I also haven't built a guitar with a scratch plate for 4 years or so. This is yeah, all sorts of new things for me. Oops. I've made the neck and the cavity the exact correct 100% depth to have the overhang of the fretboard fit on top of the scratch plate perfectly. and that was by design. Well, it was kind of by design, but it actually worked out, which is nice. There is absolutely no reason for me to use a copper mallet for this, except for the fact that it's a copper mallet and it's cool. Not too bad, just not perfect. I'm going to have to come back. Yeah, what I'm going to do is later in my life, I'm going to make a nice brass, single piece of brass with the holes drilled in it, and that will tidy that up quite nicely. For now, we're on a bit of a race against time. I need to shield that cavity, so we're going to do that before I put wires in, just because that's easier. So this, let's see if we can get this in one piece, because that is the ideal. The problem I have is this copper tape has actually gone off, so the adhesive doesn't really work anymore. If we weren't in a rush, I'd be using Crimson's shielding paint. Okay, Faraday cage. We want to stop electromagnetic radiation getting in, and therefore making buzzes and noises and hums, specifically from fluorescent lights and things like that. Messing around with copper. So this is a necessary, fiddly, sharp evil, and I've, of course, massively complicated it by trying to do it in one piece. So, there we go. There are times in luthiery when I feel like a preschooler. This is one of them. Okay, so that folds over, which means that there's an electrical connection here, and we're covered. Very gently put these screws in, and I'll go back and tighten them all a bit later by hand. Okay, so nice and solid is absolutely essential. The strings in this case are going in from behind the guitar. And thus would hold the bridge down, but the better contact we have between the saddles and the body, and therefore the neck, the better tonal transfer of vibration and all that jazz. And if you, whatever view you hold on tone wood, is it true or not with regards to electric guitars? Whatever you believe, comment below. Just have a look at that. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. This scratch plate doesn't need to move anymore. So we're going to put that down. Okay. I just wanted to make sure it worked with the neck in place. This bit really doesn't need a tutorial. Okay. These Fermag drills are great. They've got a very, very tight helix, which means when you're drilling through... It is a helix. When you're drilling through a hole that's already there, or you drill into a cavity, it tends to pull itself in, and that can be scary. Anyway. Now all I'm doing is drilling until I have until I touch the neck. Okay, so now I know where my screws need to go. Swap out, probably for a 3.5mm drill, but we have the technology, we will use it. All right, strings. And this is when the guitar comes to life. Or, quite possibly where we find a catastrophic design error. You know it's a guitar when, in order to work on it, you need a neck rest. So this headstock isn't 100% complete. I'm going to string it up, and then put in the string trees. Which are going to tension everything up. Okay, strings. Go for the other side. That is actually looking like that string is a little bit too far off. Oh, there we go. To one side. I might have to adjust the neck on this. I thought I'd check that. Let us see. All right. The all parts box of awesomeness, where are you? I need string trees. And these are necessary because flat headstock, string trees required. Fiddly little beasts. When you put new strings on a guitar, whether it's a new guitar or not, always stretch them out a little bit. You will still have tuning stability issues right at the beginning as the strings stretch in, but you can minimize that to a certain extent. Ouch. Oh, I've got red stain on me from earlier. That was quite scary. So. Alrighty, so I am now in the final stages. Always do it slowly and don't take too much. There are ways to recover from cutting the nut down. Basically fill the slot with super glue or build a new nut from scratch. So remember when we first had issues right at the beginning of this, or at least I was slightly worried about the neck shape? It's perfectly fine. Okay, so that's part of the way there. Okay, the action is relatively high. The intonation is going to be completely off. See? I need to move all of those back a little bit, but we knew that from the start. The string alignment is now fine. Now that we've got everything under tension. Ha ha ha! Now I need to wire it up. I don't like wiring. That makes me sad. Okay. Strap buttons. Let's get some strap buttons in. Anything to avoid the wiring. Okay, so I'm just putting the whole thing together beforehand. Hardware in place, and then we'll wire up from there. So that's the volume, that's the tone. I'm doing this backwards to a normal Telecaster. Teddies normally have the switch up here. I don't like that. It would just get beaten. Okay, this is the first. Ooh. Volume, correct. Tone, correct. We have both pickups. Okay, I need to swap the pickups around, and we're done. We can go and put it into a proper amp. Yeah. I think we're done. I think this is a finished guitar. I'm going to just have a quick check over of the action. Stretch those strings out one more time, and then goodbye. Or we'll put it in an amp and see what it actually sounds like. All right then, look, I've learned that I can't play guitar, especially after 5 days of building one. But what can you do? In the comments below, please send links to builds that you have done, send links to ideas of what you want to do. Click like, subscribe, share this with all of your friends. We really appreciate and need that kind of feedback. And let us know what you would like to see next. Check out our site, crimsonguitars.com, thevintagetool.com. TritonTools.com. Who else have we been involved? Allparts.uk.com. There's lots of .coms here. Yeah, without All Parts, this guitar would not have been built. Goodbye.